Hello everyone. So let's start with our today's topic. Today we'll be continuing with a chapter that is the rise of nationalism in Europe, and we will be starting a new topic that is the age of revolutions. We'll be covering the time period in this topic that is 1830 to 1848. So, as you all know, that we have talked about the conservatives, and the conservative regimes tried to consolidate their power. And whereas, on the other hand, if we talk about liberalism and nationalism, they came to be increasingly associated with the revolution in many regions of the Europe, such as if we talk about some of the regions. So they were Italian and German state, some provinces of the Ottoman Empire, Ireland and Poland. So basically, the revolutions were led by the liberal nationalists who belonged to the educated middle class. And in this class, there were some of the professors, school teachers were there, clerks were there, and also the members of the commercial middle classes were there who took part in these revolutions. So, the very first upheaval that took place in France was in July 1830, and due to this, the Bourbon kings who had been actually restored to power during the conservative reaction after 1815 were now actually overthrown by the liberal revolutionaries. The liberal revolutionaries actually they installed a constitutional monarchy, and Louis Philippe was the head. Now, there was this saying that Metternich remarked that when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. So, by this term, Metternich actually wanted to emphasize that whatever happens in France is also affecting the rest of Europe. So, the July Revolution, if we talk about, sparked an uprising in Brussels also, which led to Belgium breaking away from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands. So, whatever is happening in France, it is something or the other is also affecting, and something is also happening in rest of the Europe. Now, an event that actually mobilized the nationalist feelings amongst the educated people, amongst the educated elite who were living there in Europe, was the Greek War of Independence. This was another very important war. So, Greece had been a part of the Ottoman Empire since the 15th century, and the growth of revolutionary nationalism in Europe actually have sparked a struggle for independence among the Greeks. So this all began in 1821, and nationalists in Greece, if we talk about, they got support from the other Greeks living in exile, and they also got support from many of the Western Europeans who actually had sympathy for the ancient Greek culture. Now, there were some poets and artists who actually lauded Greece as the cradle of the European civilization. So, children, please remember that these kind of important lines, for example, we studied earlier that whatever Metternich had remarked that whenever France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. And now this line that is the Greece can be called as the cradle of the European civilization. These kind of lines can come as questions in your board examinations. So you need to underline these lines in your book, and you need to write in front of them whatever I'm explaining you, so that it will be easy for you while you read the book. It will be easy for you to actually understand these lines. So, poets and artists had actually written in their documents or written in their works that Greece was the cradle of the European civilization. And why it is called so? Because it gave birth to almost every aspect of the Greek culture, from theater to democracy to Olympics to philosophy. And also, very importantly, the golden age of Greek culture was precisely when Socrates, Plato, and there were others who ruled the academic world during those times. And their mountains, rocky land, it was not good for farming. So the ancient Greeks became excellent sailors who actually traveled to different lands. Greek sailors learned a lot of different cultures and spread their ideas, their cultures to many lands far from their home. That is why it is said that it is known as the cradle for European civilization, because it also has actually spread their ideas. The Greek people have spread their ideas to different parts of the Europe. And one very important thing was that it mobilized public opinion, which supported its struggle against the Muslim Empire as well. Now, there was this English poet that was Lord Byron, who actually organized funds and went later on to fight in the war. And he died in the war of fever in 1824. And finally, a very important Treaty of Constantinople was signed in 1832. What was this Treaty of Constantinople? It actually recognized Greece as an independent nation, and hence it was signed in 1832. It is a very important treaty for Greek people, as it recognized Greece as an independent nation. Now, this is the first subtopic of this topic that we are doing, that is the age of revolutions, that is the romantic imagination and the national feeling. So we have in our earlier videos talked about the feeling of nationalism, that is the feeling of oneness or collectiveness that is there in the people who are living in one nation. So there was this development of nationalist feeling or nationalism feeling. It actually did not came about only through wars or territorial expansion. Culture also plays a very important role in developing this feeling of nationalism in people. So culture played an important role, and it created an idea of nation. Art and poetry also have an important role to play. So there were some stories and music that also helped in expressing and shaping the nationalist feelings in the people. Now we'll be looking at Romanticism. Romanticism, children, was a cultural movement which actually happened to develop a particular form of nationalist sentiment amongst the people. Now, again, I'm repeating, Romanticism was a cultural movement that helped to develop a feeling of nationalist sentiment in the people. And romantic artists and poets, if we talk about, they actually criticize the glorification of reason and science, and their main focus was instead on emotions, on intuitions, and on mystical feelings. So they believed less on science, and they believed more on emotions, intuitions, and feelings. So they made efforts to create a sense of shared collective heritage, shared collective belonging, a common cultural past, and on the basis of which they actually tried to create a feeling of oneness, or they tried to create a feeling of a nation. Now, other romantics, if we talk about, such as a very important German philosopher who was John Gottfried Herder. So basically, according to him, he claimed that true German culture was to be discovered among the common people, that is Das Volk, and it was through folk songs, folk poetry, folk dances, that a true spirit of nation, that is Volksgeist, was popularized. So, for him, according to him, it was important to collect and to record these forms of folk culture were very important and essential for the project of nation building. Now, their main focus or their emphasis was on vernacular language and the collection of local folklore. And it was not just that they wanted to recover the ancient national spirit also, but also very importantly, they wanted to carry the modern nationalist message to larger audiences who were mostly illiterate. So there was this one method that could also be adopted to actually spread the message amongst the illiterate people as well. So this was especially in the case of Poland, if we talk about when it was partitioned at the end of the 18th century by the great powers, that is Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Till then, after that, also Poland no longer existed as an independent territory, and national feeling were kept alive through music and language. Still, though it was not an independent territory, still some nationalist feelings were kept alive with the help of music and language. So here you can see that the importance of music and language is so much. So here, for example, if we talk about Carol, who celebrated the national struggle through his operas and music, and he turned folk dances like the Polonaise and Mazurka into nationalist symbols. Now, a very one important thing is the language. Language plays a very important role in developing nationalist sentiments amongst the people. And if you talk about after Russian occupation, the Polish language was forced out of schools, and Russian language came in, right? So Polish language came out of the schools and Russian language came in the schools. And in 1831, a armed rebellion against the Russian rule took place, which was ultimately very badly crushed. And after that, many members of the clergy in Poland, they actually began to use language as a very important weapon of for national resistance. And Polish was used for church gatherings and also for various religious instructions. And what happened then after that, a large number of priests and bishops were put into jail because of this, because they were using Polish language, and were sent to Siberia by the Russian authorities as a punishment for their refusal to preach in Russian. So just because of this, that they were using Polish language as a symbol of national resistance, they were given punishment. Now, the use of Polish actually came to be seen as a very important and a very strong symbol of struggle against the Russian dominance. Now, after that, on this page number 15 of your chapter, that is the rise of nationalism in Europe, the topic which we are studying, this is on page number 15. And on the right hand side, there is a purple box that talks about, very importantly, the Grimm brothers. Now, these Grimm brothers, that was Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, they were born in the German city, and they studied law, and they soon very importantly developed an interest in collecting old folk tales, and they spent around 6 years traveling from village to village, talking to lots of people and writing down fairy tales which were actually handed down through the generations, and these were very popular both among the children as well as adults. So they published their first collection of tales, and subsequently both the brothers became very active in liberal politics, and especially the movement for freedom of the press. Now, in the meantime, they also published a 33-volume dictionary of the German language, and hence the Grimm brothers also saw French domination as a threat to the German culture. And what they believed in is that the folk tales they had collected were expressions of a pure and authentic German spirit. So these all folk tales that they have collected hold a very important position in German culture, and they were the true and pure and authentic expressions of German spirit. They also considered their projects of collecting folk tales and developing the German language as a part of a wider effort. And by this, they wanted to oppose French domination, and they also wanted to create a German national identity. So children, I hope you liked the video. So that's all for today. We'll come back again with the next topic, with the next video. Thank you so much.